So welcome everyone again. I'm Jessica Holland with South Arts. We are recording this session and we will have it posted hopefully by Monday at the latest, but probably tomorrow. And then I'll send a follow-up with the link to the recording. You're welcome to share. And then we also will have the PowerPoint available in a PDF format. If there's another format that you need, just reach out and let me know. But I wanted to just thank our panelists who are here. Thank you for joining and making space today for this really important conversation. Before I turn it over, though, I just wanted to quickly add that this kind of programming through South Arts is available to you because of our support from the National Endowment for the Arts. So this is one of the programs that our funding from the federal government helps support, in addition to state support and other funding from our regional partners from across the Southeast and beyond. So I want to introduce you to Lowell Fuchs. I'm going to turn it over to you. I hope I got your last name correct and didn't mess it up too badly. But Lowell, if you will take us away on this conversation, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. And you got my name perfect. So awesome. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Lowell Fuchs, and I am the Director of Arts and Community, which is a division of programming with the nonprofit healthcare organization In Community. We're based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and we serve all of Georgia and some of the Southeast as well. So Arts and Communities programming, we work alongside partners to create inclusive communities where arts and culture is accessible for really everyone throughout the South. And our organization In Community is the largest healthcare provider in Georgia that provides services for individuals with developmental disabilities. Much of the work that I do at Arts and Community involves supporting underserved communities by providing accessibility logistics and free access or open access to museums, performing arts events, cultural events, and even sporting events and beyond. And that access is for a number of communities that we are serving, including the disability community, at-risk youth, veterans, low-income communities, among others as well. And outside of my work here at Arts and Community, I am a musician, a percussionist, and a composer, and have a lot of interest in socially engaged art. So before we get going with our topic, I'd love to introduce my co-facilitators and partners in crime for this workshop. And later we'll be introducing our panelists as well as we work through the topics. But to kick things off, with me here is Kylie Moore and Deb Geraci. Kylie, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Kylie Moore. I am the Center Coordinator for the Bowling Stone Institute. I've worked in the disability community for 12 years. I teach advocacy and life skills classes to young adults with disabilities. I am also the Advisory Council Chair for Arts and Community. I do various research funds for Florida. I'm very excited to today about non-parent disabilities and accessibility for all individuals. Thank you.
All right, Deb, on to you.
I'm Deb Geraci. I am a retired music teacher, and I'm also a musician and a chaplain. And how Lowell got interested in hooking up with me was when I first moved to Atlanta. I worked for Very Special Arts as an audio describer during the Atlanta Olympics. There was a branch of the Olympics called the Cultural Olympiad. And there was about 12 of us that would go to theaters and audio describe the nonverbal action on stage. And when he found out that I had done that, board, and we've done 3 or 4 of these workshops in the past addressing different kinds of disabilities. And so this one has definitely been the most challenging one.
Awesome. Thanks, Kylie, and thanks, Deb. So as we kind of said, our workshop and panel discussion today focuses on a category of disability known as non-apparent disabilities. You might have also heard of it sometimes referred to as invisible disabilities. We're going to be really exploring today what non-apparent disabilities are, how barriers to access are going to impact individuals that have non-apparent disabilities, and ultimately how arts and cultural organizations and professionals can help make more inclusive communities and environments for not just individuals with non-apparent disabilities, but for everyone. I would like to express major gratitude to our panelists who are joining us virtually today, as well as our panelists that weren't able to be here in person, but we were able to record interviews with. It's really the perspective of individuals with lived experience with disability that is most valuable in guiding us as professionals and organizations to be better for everyone. I'd also like to thank Jessica and our friends at South Arts for bringing us on for such an exciting topic and important topic, and for hosting us today. Our South Arts is absolutely a champion for access here in the South, and we're really excited to work with them again. Right, so we will go ahead and get started here. I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me one moment. All right. So to get started, I'd actually like to share the definition of disability by the World Health Organization before we even talk about non-apparent disability. What I like about the World Health Organization's definition is that it offers both a scientific and socially relevant understanding of disability. So disability is a part of being human. Almost everyone will temporarily or permanently experience disability at some point in their life. It's estimated that 1.3 billion people, or about 16% of the global population, currently experience significant disability. The number is actually increasing due in part to population aging and an increase in prevalence of non-communicable disease. Disability ultimately results from the interaction between individuals with health conditions such as cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, and depression, among other health conditions, with personal and environmental factors, including negative attitudes, inaccessible transportation or public buildings or architecture, and limited social support. A person's environment has a huge effect on the experience and extent of disability. Inaccessible environments create barriers that often hinder the full and effective participation of persons with disabilities in society on an equal basis with others. Progress on improving social participation can be made by addressing these barriers and facilitating people with disabilities in their day-to-day lives. So what makes a non-apparent disability a category of its own? Well, it's actually in the name itself. It's non-apparent. Disability In, a nonprofit organization supporting disability inclusion, says many disabilities such as mental illnesses, learning and attention issues, some physical illnesses, neurodiversity, and many other types of disabilities are non-apparent. Unlike apparent disabilities, which can be identified often by sight alone, non-apparent disabilities can go undetected unless someone is to engage or interact verbally with an individual. And even then, a disability still is often undetectable altogether. Here's just a few examples of disabilities that would be considered non-apparent disabilities. Can be autism, PTSD, autoimmune disease, which is a category of its own, sensory processing disorder, anxiety disorder, brain injuries, diabetes, epilepsy, personality disorders, which is another category, and ADHD. There was actually a very, very long list of disabilities by the World Health Organization that would be considered non-apparent. And in even some cases, they aren't covering all of them. So non-apparent disability is clearly not a diagnosis, but a category really of disability that's solely based on disability not being immediately obvious. Otherwise, we can see from this list alone that there's often no commonality from one health condition to the next. Looking here today at some statistics for the United States and information about our communities, we currently have 61+ million Americans with a disability in the US, and that's equal to about 26%, or 1 in 4 adults out of the overall population. In the Southeast, interestingly enough, our region is the region that has a higher percentage of individuals with disabilities compared to other regions in the United States. And of those 61 million Americans with a disability, roughly 10% are non-apparent disabilities. The thing about that is that number is actually probably lower than what is really true of our communities. I actually heard just the other day in a seminar that about 30% of people with non-apparent disabilities are unaware that they have that disability. So the word non-apparent disability is our suggested terminology when speaking about this category of disability. We feel that it is, a great term to use, as it implies that the disability is non-apparent without any negative language associated with it. Two other common terms that we hear from time to time would be hidden disabilities and invisible disabilities. But many feel that these terms have negative connotations associated with them. Hidden disabilities implies that a person's hiding their disability, whereas invisible is language that's often offensive to people with disabilities, as it can imply that they're invisible within our society. Next up here, I would actually like to introduce our first panelist that I'm excited to speak with and ask some questions. David LeBaron. We are really grateful and appreciative of you being here with us today to kind of share your perspective and give us the opportunity to really listen and learn from you. So to kick things off, first, can you share a little bit of your journey with us from being in high school and choosing to stay silent about having cerebral palsy, and then as an adult, becoming more open about your disability and even stepping into an advocacy role at times?
Hey, thank you. It's good to be here. So my name is David LeBaron, and I deal with cerebral palsy. It's more on the neurological side of things. It does have to deal with my short-term and long-term memory loss and how I muscle strength in my hands. Processing is another issue of mine. But when I was in high school, I was always afraid of being judged. I kept it really quiet. I was in marching band too while I was in high school, and I was just afraid of people judging me on how my disability is, and how it affects me on my everyday operations. Let's see, what was the other half of the question? I'm sorry, it's part of my.
Yeah, no worries, David. What was one of the reasons you decided as an adult to open up and be more about having cerebral palsy?
So the reason why I opened up about my disability as an adult is probably because when I met Kylie Moore, she was running ambassador program for Bobby Dodd, or it was AADD back then. Now it's Bobby Dodd Institution. So I think when Kylie really taught me how to advocate for myself, it's actually made me feel positive about my disability and nothing negative about my disability. So I think that's where it's got from that. And I think since taking her class, since I've taken her class, I think, or had I not taken her class, I don't think I would be where I am now. So that's just what I believe there as an adult, just try to spread out the word of having a disability and sharing it with others.
What do you think makes it difficult to talk about disability, in our society, both as a person with a disability, but also maybe from others who don't have disability?
So this question really just kind of, I think it's more of like a safety blanket per se. I think a lot of people are more afraid to say stuff about their disability, and the ones who don't necessarily have a disability are afraid to say something, because I know that there's a lot of people who do tend to take that for granted. And I know that we just want to be a part of today's society and, just live our normal lives like everybody else does. But I don't know if that answers that question or not. But to be honest with you, I think it's just because people are not comfortable about talking about their disabilities.
You feel like discrimination or ableism has something to do with that?
A little bit. And the reason why I say that is because there a lot of people don't know how to handle situations when it comes down to disabilities. They are in many shapes, forms, etc. But I honestly think that people are just more afraid of trying to come out with it and say, hey, and try to feel accepted by the community itself.
Gotcha. Something I came across that was interesting. Somebody wrote an article who had a non-apparent disability, and they talked about how, like, when they were, when they didn't share that they had a disability, they dealt with sort of this double-edged sword, and that at times, like in a workplace environment or in school, people kind of viewed their disability as a character flaw, because they weren't aware. And so it kind of, they were experiencing a form of ableism that's completely different because, the people they're around weren't aware, and they just saw it as a character flaw.
Yes. Yep. No, I know for a while, like right when I started working at Publix, right when I got out of high school, I was very skeptic about letting people know about, or letting management know about my disability. But knowing the way that Publix is, they accept people who have disabilities. So I was very open with my management when I had been hired to work for Publix. You know, when I was part-time front service clerk, and then went from part-time service clerk to cashier, and then now where I currently work as a full-time in the bakery at Publix. I've definitely made sure that, you know, everybody in my department knows, yes, I do have a disability. And, you know, if there's something that you're not understanding, let me know. I'm not going to be offended, because I know sometimes my thought process is not necessarily there, but I also know that, you know, that in order for a good communication, just to let me know, hey, I don't understand something. So.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing, David. We're going to move on to our next topic and have some more questions for you down the road here. Let's see here. I'm going to share my screen again. All right. And we are going into topic 2, breaking down the disabilities. And I'd like to bring Kylie Moore up for this section.
Thank you, Mo. I'll be using Talk, which is technology of us to discuss the currently there.
I'd like us to return to the World Health Organization's definition of disability as we get into this next topic, and take a closer look at the final section of the definition. Here it says, a person's environment has a huge effect on the experience and extent of disability. Inaccessible environments create barriers that often hinder the full and effective participation of persons with disabilities in society on an equal basis with others. Progress on improving social participation can be made by addressing these barriers and facilitating persons with disabilities in their day-to-day lives. Notice that the focus is not on the individual's condition but their interactions with barriers in their surrounding environments. As arts and cultural professionals and educators, we have the opportunity to share the wonders of arts and culture with as many individuals as possible, regardless of their age or abilities. It's our responsibility to ensure that there is equitable access to our programs, performances, venues, workplaces, and surrounding environments. We're going to discuss a few barriers to access with our panelists that often prevent individuals with non-apparent disabilities from participating in the arts and humanities. According to the Council of Ontario Universities, barriers to access are conditions or obstacles that prevent individuals with diverse abilities from using or accessing knowledge, resources, and opportunities as effectively as others. These include but are limited to physical or architectural barriers, communication barriers, technology barriers, attitudinal barriers, and financial barriers. The 2 barriers to access we're going to discuss and break down with our panelists are attitudinal barriers and environmental barriers. Attitudinal barriers are barriers that are the result of a person's behaviors, actions, or false beliefs about or towards someone with a disability. We often imagine very radical example of this, like intentional verbal discrimination directed at someone with a disability. The reality is that attitudinal barriers are often unintentional and can even be viewed as an act of support by the person creating the barrier.
So I want to introduce to you 2 pairs, Montgomery and Jane Doe, who wanted to keep her identity anonymous. Both Troy and Jane were unable to be here in person with us today. So we record the answers to our questions. So, Troy and Jane, what are some most names you personally dealt with in the community?
Let me tell you about myself. I am Troy. I'm 31 years old. Me and my twin sister were both born deaf due to a complication my mom had, being 5'2", 90 pounds, not able to carry 16-pound set of twins. So somewhere in that surgery at 28 weeks, we lost enough oxygen to become deaf. So yeah, I'm here. One person isn't enough. You know, we all have to do something, whether it comes from somebody who knows what being around deaf people is like to somebody who has no idea what a disability is or what that looks like if it's not physical. So I can't tell you how many times I hear, "You don't look deaf." And I'm like, "Babe, let me ask you, how am I supposed to look like I can't hear?" You know, it's little things like that that just, we gotta do better as a group of people.
My friend Jane Doe has an interesting disorder, neurological condition that even some doctors never heard of, she just tells me. So tell us more.
Let's see, all of a sudden, you can't walk, or you can't speak, or you lose control of what your body is doing. It doesn't matter if you're around people, it can happen when you're by yourself. And it shows itself mainly in that you lose control of what your body is doing.
What's it called?
Conversion disorder.
And why that?
You're converting emotions into physical manifestations.
That makes sense. You didn't have it all your life that you were aware of it, but it only showed up.
It showed up at work, and someone I worked with was walking behind me on an ordinary day and said, "You're walking funny." Next thing I know, I'm in a nurse's care, and then I'm in the hospital, and I'm there for several weeks. They ran all kinds of tests for, I don't remember what. I wondered if I had MS. I wondered all kinds of things. And all these tests later found out that this was what it was. And over the years, doctors for different medical things, they always take your medical history. Some doctors literally did not know what it was. And I had to explain to them what it was. A lot of times it will happen with strong emotion, very, very happy, or like I said before, anxious things, like sad things like a funeral or a memorial, or very happy things.
Intense things.
But sometimes it happens when things are not intense. It can happen ordering food at McDonald's. And it just comes and goes. And so I know what it is. I don't worry about it. And typically it'll go away within a few minutes.
I could see it possibly being triggered by going out to a venue because you're in an unfamiliar territory and there's more of an intense anxiety about that. And a few minutes ago, we talked about that, about how a person can react who's like taking your tickets or seeing you to a seat. And if you have any manifestations, I was asking you, what can they do? Because that's what our audience is going to ask you. What can we do to make it easier for you if you have one of these spells while you're being seated, or we let you in or whatever? We want to make it be as kind as we can.
Hold on to my arm, or just make sure I don't fall, especially when there's stairs.
Good point.
It's often in a theater or in any kind of venue, you're going up or down stairs. That's the thing they could do. I wanted lunch, easy peasy lunch. They were assuming, I can only imagine this, they were thinking I was drunk because I wasn't speaking right. I don't remember how I was walking, but I wasn't speaking right. I was stuttering, and they kept saying the bar's over there. I don't drink. I just wanted lunch. And it took several tries before it got through to them that I wanted to know, should I seat myself or will I be taken to a table for lunch? Not interested in the bar.
Okay, and they never figured it out. You just,
Eventually they did, and I got to go sit down and have lunch. But their first assumption must have been I wanted a drink because of how I sounded, and I didn't.
wow. Good example.
I'm not one to say names, but this is a perfect example of a really bad experience that I had to make right. So I'm 16, I'm leaving a last football game, my battery died. So I'm swerving, I guess you could say, trying to get my battery. I get pulled over. An officer comes up to me, thinks I'm drinking, thinks I'm anything. Deaf people are overly expressive because that's our language. It's not me being on drugs. It's not me being drunk. It's not me being a mental case. It's not anything other than me expressing my language. The way you would say it with your voice, how it fluctuates, that's how I say it with my face. So I got pulled out of the car because I said, hold on, I'm getting my battery. That doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but in the moment, I wasn't thinking to explain that. I just went to go grab it. I got pulled out of my car. It was not a great experience, but in the end, I was apologized to because he understood just how scary that can be. Now, imagine it wasn't me and it was somebody that can't talk. Imagine it was somebody that only knows Spanish Sign Language and the officer knows American. So now we're lying. Or now we're making up time to get out of something. This is a scary world if we don't offer more accessibility. That could have gone horrible, but because I have great parents who raised me to just stand my ground, tell the truth, be who I am, and tell them what I need. If I tell an officer I need to look at you, look at me. If I tell you I need you to write something down, please write something down. If I tell you to repeat yourself, please do so, because it's only me helping you help you. It's like a team thing. It's supposed to be.
Okay.
Environmental barriers include physical barriers and even forms of communication such as wayfinding and directional signs. It encompasses everything from the architectural design of a building to noise control, lighting, the directional flow of foot traffic in a space, and so much more.
So next up, I want to welcome our second infant parents, Troy Birch. Troy, we would love for you to introduce yourself, tell how you are connected to the disability community.
Hi, good morning. My name is Tori. I work for In Community of Georgia. I've been a part of this agency for 14 years now. I started back when it was Enable of Georgia. We merged with GCSS and became one. I've been in this field for about 26 years. My godmother actually owned a host of group homes back in Florida, and I was kind of just thrown into the mix, and I've been here ever since. So that's how I connect to this community, and I love what I do. I am a day program manager here. I've been at this day program for about 8 years now. between one-on-one support to lead and now the actual manager.
Tori, what's a day program for those that might not know on here?
I want to first say a day program is not a daycare. I know people get it confused, but we're two separate things. A day program is where we try to introduce the community to our individuals. And there's no holds bar here. We do some of everything and go some of everywhere and dare someone to stop us. I do something as wild as, I don't know if anybody knows the Magic Mike movie that came out. I took all of my ladies to see Magic Mike and they loved it. Even my ladies who made noises, had their own soundtrack. It was very quiet during the meeting. I take my guys to Hooters. They enjoy the ladies. They got pictures with them. So anything you would expect for a normal 40, 50, 60-year-old to do, that's what we do. And we, like I said, we do some of everything. It's a day-to-day challenge, absolutely, with different barriers inside and out, but we make it happen. So, and I think the best part about the day program is every day is different. Nothing is the same. Absolutely nothing is the same. And I enjoy it.
You all go to like museums and stuff too. And like,
oh, you want me to break it down? I'm sorry, Lo, my apologies. Yes, we go to museums, movie theaters. We're part of the community garden up in Commons. We do different plays. Coca-Cola, we set up with the aquarium. We do putt-putt golf. Like I say, we dive into some of everything, and every museum that arts and community has offered, my guys have gone, even back during the pandemic. Like we just did what was, what was open to us. Noah's Ark, my guys love going out with the animals, which is very far, by the way. But anywho, it is a good place to go. They enjoyed it. So absolutely, if you're not into arts and community, that's something to get involved in. Oh, we do the, what is it, Lowell? The basketball games we've gone to several times. We're looking forward to the WNBA, if that should come back around. And my guys are looking for a Falcons game. Not me per se, because I am a Dolphins fan. But if it's offered, we will go.
awesome.
So Tori, your programs for adults with developmental disabilities who have both a parent and non-parent disabilities. What are some of the more significant barriers you personally dealt with, or that you support those alongside their caregivers?
So I think it's interesting that I think the other young lady, her name was Tori, and she gave her story about deaf, because I was going to touch on the deaf population here as well. My guys here who are deaf has been, deaf their entire life, and they dealt with the way they dealt with it. So a lot of them do not sign. So if you were to walk up to them, they look, I don't know, would you say quote unquote normal? Someone you just walk them and ask a question to, and they can't hear what you're saying. And then some get offended because there's no response. And if there's a caregiver there, then they will explain that gestures work better than trying to sign. I am attempting a sign language class, been there for about a year now, because it's 1 day a week, but it is something that we do. And it's interesting to see how they react to the fact that I know some of the signs that they know. So that's what we're working on. As far as the barriers, like I say, with the, and some, as you talk about the non-apparent, like you don't see them, like some you can see in a wheelchair or a walker or some type of deformity, but some you don't. And they're just as simple looking as we are, and they don't know how to express themselves with the sounds. I have one young lady, if we do not get to the movie theater ahead of time, walking in the dark does not work for her. Immediately plop out, immediately terrified. We get the screams and everything, and it's only because she can't see. We're walking there. I'm late running to the theater all the time. I get right on there to get in my seat. It's not the same thing with them. And understanding that, so give us an extra 5 minutes when we're in there, that the lights kind of fade away just a little bit slower than what they already do. And that will help with my guys attending like a theater. Another barrier, and I don't know if this one adds, but when we go to restaurants monthly, we do restaurant outings. And we went to a restaurant, and we'll ahead of time say, hey, we have about 60 people coming. This is what we're dealing with, wheelchairs, walkers, and things like that. They automatically say, yes, no problem, Tori, we got it set up. We went to this one place, big, beautiful place, but they placed us in this one room. And long tables with chairs, right next, to make you uncomfortable sitting there. And it's like, we got 60 chairs, and I'm looking like, oh, God, no. This is not going to work, but we have to make it work because this is what we have. And my guys are looking forward to eating out. So just knowing little things like that, even if I said we have wheelchairs or walkers coming in, we need some room, you know, and you can't see it from this monitor, but I'm a pretty healthy young lady, you know, so I need some elbow room myself. So I know my guys need it, you know, so just thinking outside the box when it comes to things like that. And it's just simple, but sometimes we miss it because we're trying to get everything in there, everybody in there, and not considering the obstacles that we face daily. And I saw something on here about discrimination. We're in Roswell, and most of my staff is African American. Most of my individuals are not African American. And if we were to attend a place, they'll immediately walk up to the individual who's not and ask questions. Hey, what are you guys doing here? Not knowing that we're the caregivers, not them. We're able to answer the questions. So we get the same type of discrimination. Or you go into places where people do this. As they're staring, I get very offensive. That's just me. And I go into mama mode. Seriously. Hey, what are we looking at? Hey, everything's okay over here. You know, I'm very animated, as you can see. So I make it fun for my individual, but also let that person know that's doing it. This is not good. This is not cool. You're doing something wrong here. Let's try to do something different. And even training their kids, you know, to understand that this is what we have. When I was in high school, we had this population. I knew nothing about it though, because they were separated from us. They were out in there, what we call them, it's a name from it's the name for the buildings on the outside is where they were. I can't think of the name of it. And we were on the inside in the building. So we never came across with them at all. So once I got into this population, I was well in my 20s. And to understand that back then, how we were separated, it still wasn't cool.
Thank you for all your info and tips. You're really helpful. So now these next two questions I want to direct to both Tori and David. So Tori and David, what are some more significant attitudinal and environmental barriers you've personally dealt with in your community?
So I can think about a few instances that's taken place. Having the wrong idea of what this population is. Some get very babyish. Oh, hey, how you doing? I'm such and such, nice to meet you. And they'll be standing like, yeah, and I'm like, you can talk normal. They're fine, you know, you just be yourself. Hey, I'm such and such, you know. Oh, come on. And some of my guys eat that up because they love it. They got you in their hand then, you know, and then it's like, hey, can I have a Coke? Hey, let me get a chocolate bar over here. Hey, can I have this over here? Because now I got you. Instead of just saying, hey, I'm Tori, how you doing? Come on over here, let's get started. You know, and it kind of switches off because now I'm in control here, you know. So they enjoy it. And sometimes we sit back and watch it because we enjoy it too. Like they're going to get them this time, you know, so, and it rolls that way. But I think the attitude of how you treat this population needs to change wholeheartedly. Because I think what stands me different from everyone else is everyone that's in my building now is treated the same way I would treat you. I expect the same thing for you. I expect the same thing from them, hands down. And they'll tell you all the time, there's nothing different about you. So why you can't go over and pick the paper up? Let's figure out how we're going to get it. Let's figure out how we're going to brush our teeth. Let's figure out how we're going to pick our cup up. Let's make it simple. Hey, the water fountain over here, how are we going to get here? So we make it simple, you know, and I think that's what we miss. I always tell my old CEO, we miss the little things. It's the little things that count, not this big grandstand. Oh, take a picture, I'm here. No, where's my water fountain? How can I get some juice today? Who's going to fix my lunch? You know, simple stuff, simple.
I love that. That's a great answer.
Thank you.
David, what do you think?
So that actually blew my mind right there. But no, I haven't had that personally happen to me, but I have seen it with other people, with other folks. You know, it comes down to a point where, you know, we do want to be treated the way we should be. More like adults. And I think a lot of people do take disadvantages of us trying to be more independent and like try to talk to us like we're 1-2 years old. And I unfortunately do see that all the time. And it just, the little things need to change and become more I'm trying to find out what that word is, but more on the independent side, more accepting. So yeah, I that's all I can really say about that. And yeah, so
Good answer. Okay. This next question is kind of interesting. So, how can you provide an experience where someone thought they were trying to help you, but they were actually creating action beer instead? Do you need me to answer the question again?
yeah, sorry, I was also trying to look for my unmute button. Sorry.
So can you both? Did you example where someone was trying to help you, but they were actually creating action beer instead?
So like a situation where someone's tried to help me and it just hasn't come out the way it should.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've had some situations where I've needed help with trying to figure out where I needed to go somewhere, and directions usually tend to, for me, it doesn't necessarily go the way that I think it's supposed to. And I think part of that, it's part of my processing. Sometimes I just don't understand. Sometimes I might ask the next person. And sometimes I might even have to say, hey, can you actually show me where this place is, that place, depending on what the situation of things are. But yeah, no, that's about, yeah.
Kylie, I think you have an example too, right?
Yeah. But this first one go for you, example.
Example of helping, but it caused more of a chaos. That's every day here at Kylie. Not just joking.
Yeah.
Let me see. So when we're out in the community and we try to do structure, routine, even though we're out because it works for some of our guys. And if we're setting boundaries, like, no, we're going to stay in this section right here until this right here is done, and then we'll move over here. But then you have some of the helpers at the park or at the theater. No, you guys come over here. Sit over here with us. No, come on, I'll hold your hand. And we're like, no, it's okay. We'll stay right here because it works for us right here so we can see, because we're outside of the four walls. But they're helping. I'll stand here with them. No problem. You guys go ahead. And then at that moment, we have an outburst or a breakdown because I don't know this person, or either I want to do this. They say, I can't do this. Let's go over here. I don't want to go. And then it becomes a tug of war in the exchange, because this lady said I can do this, but Tori said we need to stay over here. So what are we going to do? And then once we get that breakdown, then at that point, either we get it back under control or we have to leave that establishment altogether. And it's no fault to the other ones because, they're trying to help, but sometimes it doesn't help, just makes it worse.
So you go in there and you got a plan that works. And the staff tries to help you with, then they go off your plan. But so yeah, that could be definitely chaos.
Like two separate systems sort of clashing.
Right.
Right.
So I'll go next. I'll kind of reiterate what you say. Because of my disability, which is CP, White David, cerebral palsy, and because of the way I talk, people think that I'm intellectually impaired. And I'm not. I work in the disability community. I have a college degree. Not two, what David said. So oftentimes, when I go to a restaurant, instead of asking me what I want to eat, to ask my parents or my friends that have come to get me and pick me up. And they're like, what does she want? And a lot of times I try to redirect the right stuff back to me, but say, hey, I can talk and I want this. Or my parents and friends, they can get sarcastic and do it. How would I know? I'm not Kylie. Like, how would I know what she wants to eat? I'm not psychic. So I can kind of get fired. But again, I think this education, the more we're out there, the better people will understand the disability community.
That's a great answer, Kylie.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good point you made, Kylie, about the restaurant and giving your order. And patience is the key when it comes to the waitresses that come as well, to make sure that they stand there and wait. Because I say, give them a second. Let's figure out, are you going to eat something? What do you want? You know, and sometimes we'll assign burger, or we'll point to something on the page, you know, or even at the register and they're paying, you know, I make sure there's not a line behind us. You know, take your time, count your change out. It's okay. Slide your card. This is all yours. I don't want no parts of it, but yeah, I definitely agree with you.
Because it's, when they look at you, and I get so impressed when somebody does, like, thank you for looking at me. But I shouldn't have to say thank you for something they should be doing. But I do, because it's kind of weird, you know?
Yeah.
So now I like to pass it over to Deb Reedy, and she's gonna walk us through a third part of our presentation. Deb?
Okay, unmuted myself, much better.
You
I
there, Deb?
unmuted myself. Is everybody aboard?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, we've put together some scenarios based on some things that really probably have happened, I think, Lowell's experiences. And in this first one, and this gives you a chance to have some input, especially not just the panelists, but our listeners as well. A new musical theater company has opened up in town and had a wildly successful first year, rave reviews. And as the staff of the company reflects on their first season, a few concerns come up as they prepare to make improvements for their second season. And among all the great feedback they received from patrons about the productions, there were a few guests who were frustrated and upset with the company after attending. In one instance, staff received an email from a family that attended a production which contained sensitive content that was triggering and distressing to the father in the family. The family members stated they felt unprepared and blindsided by a specific scene in the musical that prompted a previous traumatic experience to surface for their father. To make things worse, they felt unheard by the front of house volunteer staff when they tried to explain this issue upon leaving the venue that night. What was supposed to have been a great evening at the musical turned into a horrible experience, leaving this family embarrassed, stressed, and unheard. Now, our questions for you are, you can see them. How can our musical theater company help guests navigate this barrier to access in the short term? And how should they be planning to remove this barrier entirely in the long term? And no, we don't know exactly what the sensitive material was. So you have to kind of take a leap of faith there. And we talked about this the other day, and we came up with some interesting examples, but I'm really curious to see what y'all say. So all I can see is the question on my screen. So I hope somebody's wildly waving their hands out there saying, hey, me, call me.
Yeah, thank you, Deb. Feel free to come off camera if you want to answer, or you can also just add your response in the chat, and I will read it out loud.
Okay, and this is a very pertinent topic right now, because it's up, some of it's up to personal interpretation. Well, what triggers who, and how should we handle that? And there's that goes from reading a book to a class to a scene in a show. So
we have an answer in the chat. Sarah Campbell wrote, post the plot synopsis online. And April Cannon replied, agreed, we already do this at our Performing Arts Center.
that's one of the things that was suggested, yes, like a rating system in advance.
Yeah, I'd imagine like some sort of warning ahead of time. Yeah, someone had mentioned Jasmine Bamlett. Please forgive me if I'm getting your name incorrect, but Jasmine mentions trigger warnings in the program. So if there's sensitive material, perhaps something like a heads up.
Yeah, I feel like this is a place where you can have like a content advisory, maybe not just online, but it could be in your program. It could be even an announcement to all of the guests prior to the start of the show if it's major, if it's very triggering content.
Yes, and some other people in the chat said, April Cannon said, you'll always have patrons who attend anyway, but it's up to viewer discretion. It's just, now that they have that information, they can make an informed decision. Chris says content advisories in the playbill can be very helpful. And a recent showing of the curious incident of the dog in nighttime, I learned ahead of time that there might be loud noises and the secondhand trauma of watching a child's meltdown. So some things that Chris observed while attending a performance.
Those are good comments. Has anybody zeroed in on the aftermath of it, where they felt unheard by the front of the house volunteer staff when they tried to explain the issue upon leaving the venue that night? So that's under the umbrella of damage control. Interested in hearing if anybody has any input about that, written or otherwise. Patsy?
While Patsy's looking, someone wrote in the comments, the family noted they felt not heard. Invite the family to a conversation and understand better the situation and specifically what was triggering.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm Patsy. I'm an artist activist with multiple sclerosis and a family member of All Kids Included here in Miami-Dade County. And I've served on many grant panels, and through our grant panels and training opportunities we have doing panels like this with the different theaters, probably anything that gets a grant from Cultural Affairs basically has to get training now to deal with these kinds of situations, and having quiet rooms and having different adaptive advices available, giving mini grants to these organizations to provide accessible things going on. So you're always going to have issues that come up. You're always going to have some kind of trigger that you can't account for. But having a staff that has the training to deal with this and be understanding and compassionate goes a long way to getting that patron back in your venue. So again, training. I am so impressed by what you guys are doing. I got started as art therapy with VSA Arts long ago, and made the difference in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Some answer, Patsy.
Great answer. I love what you're doing. You're preaching to the choir here, and evidently
I know. But it works.
That was my emphasis, was exactly what you said. You're always going to trigger somebody somehow, somewhere. So the gift is in the damage control, how you handle it afterwards. And you're right. The only way to do it is to train in advance so people know how to handle that delicate situation. Thanks for that answer. That was great. Oh, okay. All right. We're going to move on unless there's another comment being printed that I don't know about. Can we move on?
Yes, I think we're good.
Yes.
Okay, actually, I did these out of order, but life will go on. If you build it, they will come, is the famous quote from Field of Dreams. This quote is often thrown around in accessibility, DEAI workshops and articles when talking about how investing in accessibility modifications leads to new audiences. But is it that simple? Well, no. Once upon a time, a museum created a sensory morning once a month for individuals who would benefit from visiting the museum in an environment where guest capacity was limited and lighting and sounds were modified. So no fourth grade school groups running around hooting and hollering, no tightly packed exhibition rooms where everyone is squeezing in, trying to get a good look at the special exhibition, and no sense of urgency to move at the pace of the rest of the crowd. This museum created an incredible opportunity for people to engage and participate at their museum in a sensory-friendly environment. But unfortunately, no one was coming to the sensory mornings. And after a short amount of time, the museum decided to stop hosting the events due to lack of audience and what they deemed was a project failed. So we're opening up these next questions to our facility. Everybody, again, same deal. And if you'd like to suggest solutions, feel free to raise your hand and share what are some of the reasons you think the audience participation was low for the sensory mornings based on the limited information you have above. And of course, as always, what steps and actions can the organization take to foster relationships with disability communities, make individuals feel welcome, and improve participation from the community? So jump in.
Jasmine has her hand raised. Jasmine?
So as you were reading that kind of made me think about during the pandemic when there were sensory hours in like grocery stores. And one of the things that I think is important is to recognize that the definition of success for an experience like that is not necessarily something that needs to be measured in the number of people that are engaging with it. Because if it's something where you can help just one person experience that in a new way, or experience it for the first time, then I think that counts as a success. But that does have to be an experience that is co-imagined or co-created with the community that you're trying to reach. Because they could be creating these sensory mornings based on expectations that they have of what a community might want. But if there's not a community member that is present in the conversation about how to actually execute that, then you might be doing something that actually isn't helpful, or it's not serving the needs of the community that you're trying to reach. And so of course they're not going to come.
Yeah, I see someone commented nothing about us without us. And that's like,
Yeah.
phrase. Patsy?
Patsy?
Yes, this makes me sad. Our museums and our sensory-friendly programs are going great here. And we do tons of outreach, tons of field trips, sensory-friendly field trips, where we're really reaching out to the community, following VSA's partner, putting on festivals that provide people with information on what's available. I would love to check into the quiet room at the Children's Museum. It's fabulous. And where they were doing once a month programming, now they're doing once a week. Again, outreach, field trips. We develop symbols for sensory-friendly performances. It's just getting the word out there, and they will come.
What does getting them out there look like?
One of the first things we did 17 years ago was a community festival, and our first victims, we called it, was a children's museum. And we would have sensory-friendly performances, caption performances. We get in performances with the shadow interpreters on productions, and we have field trips, mixed abilities, all kinds of things going on where we really, really do a huge outreach into the community. Then we do teacher trainings to what do you do when you have a kid with special needs come into your classroom. And it just goes on, the field trips, trying to provide funding to get the sensory friendly performances of the Nutcracker at the Children's Theater. And each time we're, are we nuts? Have we lost it this time? And it's always been successful. We have art in the parks now on weekends in 4 places in the county for kids that need special adaptations. We have a summer camp now, a full-time summer camp going in the county. So they've been massive on the outreach. And if you get any grant in the county, and I think the state, there's 15 points there for that you only can get if you have reached out to the accessibility portion of the community, reached out to at-risk. And if you don't get those 15 points, you're not going to get the money. You're just not. So it was a dedicated objective of our cultural arts department that made this effort starting 18 years ago, and no chance that it happened that one of the directors had a child with autism. And we've done great. We've done great.
Thank you, Patsy. I want to just recognize that we had a hand up from Chris. They have a question. And then we also have a few more comments that I wanted to read aloud. Chris, did you still want to add your comment or questions?
Sure. I think it's kind of been addressed at this point, but I had the example of the Pittsburgh airport really came to mind in not including the relevant communities when they were creating a sensory room. The airport came up with this idea and made a really bright, engaging, exciting room. And that really wasn't what people needed in the airport. And so I think of that as just like the perfect example of, reach out to the people who will be using the space in that time. And it's really helpful.
That's great.
Good anecdote. Deb, do you want me to read a few more of the comments? Just
a few more, yeah.
Okay. Jasmine had mentioned that it's also not going to happen overnight. So there is some intentionality behind this work that takes time. And then someone had a specific question earlier about the types of training that might be available out there to staff to help create more empathetic staff or staff with understanding. And then there was another question about what symbols for sensory what are the symbols for sensory performances? And if there's a resource that I could quickly look up, I'm happy to drop a link in the chat for everyone.
Thank you.
All Kids Included site in Miami has that because they actually developed them.
Good resource.
Mm-hmm. It was, what do we do? How do we do this? Anybody know how to do this? And who do we even contact? And how do you develop a symbol? And it was pretty much put it out there and use it, and then it gets accepted. But we've done it. So All Kids Included, check it out.
Okay, thank you. And thank all of y'all for everything that you've said. It's really been valuable, and it's we went round and round on this when we were first writing it, so I didn't know where it was going to go, but this was great. You came up with some really good stuff. Lowell, back to you.
Yeah, and just to add, for trainings, there are multiple organizations out there that can provide training. Arts and Community is one of those, but beyond that, there's Arts Access North Carolina. There's a Southeast ADA Center as well that has different types of training, some of which are actually free. And they have like series that you can follow along with and a newsletter. I can't speak for some of the other states, but those 3 I know have training. We are going to wrap things up here. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. So we wanted to leave you all with our 4 tools for inclusion. And we've touched on these a lot throughout this session, so I'll make it brief. But the first is it's so important to prioritize meaningful inclusion for all of your communities, and that includes individuals with disabilities. What that looks like is consulting and including individuals with disabilities in meaningful ways. We talked about like the sensory mornings and the sensory events. Like that's something where you really need to have relationships built with the greater community, be running things like running ideas by them. You know, and in some ways you can do that is by having an access advisory committee that can help guide you with your programming. That same committee could even help your organization beyond just programmatically, but even within your internal operations at your organization. Beyond just reaching out and having committees for inclusion, we suggest that it's important to ask a question of, do you have what you need to participate? And that can be asked to internally to employees through things like pulse surveys or even ergonomic assessments. That's a great way of getting the information you need and letting individuals speak about what they might need to participate fully without anyone having to actually come outright and say and address what their disability is and what resources they might need. And the same goes for, you know, asking that question to your guests that are attending your performances or your venues. Our second tool here is universal design. Universal design is about creating environments and objects and resources that are available for everyone. These things should be available to the broadest of communities possible. There is a saying with universal design that what is an accommodation for one person is a benefit for many others as well. It's really, I see universal design almost as like a filter, that everything you do as an organization should pass through that filter of universal design. And that will help you figure out, maybe this educational program, we're not addressing it from the right perspective, or it's not being developed from the right perspective, because as it is right now, we're excluding this community and that community, and by having it designed the way it is. Could even be something that's applied to if you're, you know, the architecture or build outs or additions of a buildings or theater or spaces. Our third tool is communication. Communication is really key, especially for the disability community, making sure people know before they go what to expect, what resources are available, making sure that that information is easily accessible. No one wants to dig around a website for 15 minutes trying to find an accessibility page, or, you know, figuring out what number to call or form to fill out for wheelchair reservations. Same can go for if you have something like a map of your venue. Rather than creating a separate maybe sensory map, have one universal map that has accessibility information included on that, including things like where your quiet space is in your building, or where you might have a sensory room, where you could find things like sensory backpacks, things of that nature. And then last but not least, training is so important. And it is not just one person's responsibility at an organization to make that their programming and environments accessible. It is everyone's responsibility, from your board of directors to your senior leadership, your staff, all the way down to your volunteers if they are working directly with your audience. So it's something that we suggest that everyone take part in on an annual basis to make sure that staff are trained up with training such as disability awareness and sensitivity. I know we're out of time here, but if there are any last minute questions, feel free to ask. And I will share in just a second our contact page if you want to reach out as well.
Providing fidget. There's a lot of
Can I say something? One more plug at All Kids Included. We have developed, I guess you could call them maps, going to the show, going to the museum, going to the theater, going to the zoo. It just keeps growing, but these you can access online, or All Kids Included can send them to you. And it shows with cartoonish characters that can be accepted by all, what to expect. You may have to stand in line. This is the ticket booth. They're going to turn the lights out. Just all these things that gives them preparation to know what you're getting into when you do these things, when you do these field trips. And that's been another wonderful tool that we've utilized. And I recommend to everybody going to the show.
Thank you. And I just dropped a link to that. I also just want to let you know that I can share this chat as well. I put some resources in there. And I just want to remind everyone to reach out to your state arts councils as well. I wanted to just, if I may, and actually we're well above time. We actually scheduled a 12:30. So I think we're actually good. But if I may just offer a quick perspective, because I'm in grant mode right now. I've been going through a lot of grants, some having to do with accessibility and some not. But I think part of what we're looking for in a lot of grants that are addressing, things that are beyond just the artistic sphere and into the social sphere is that we're looking for authentic relationships. And so, not just naming an organization, but really having that relationship with them. It doesn't have to be a brand new relationship, but we are looking for some sense of authenticity there. So the other thing I want to point out is that we just relaunched, we being South Arts, our micro accessibility grant. This is not a lot of funds. The funds go quickly. This year we had an anonymous donation, so we used that money to match the grant. So we could use NEA funds and not pass along the match to those who are applying. So you don't have to have a match this year. And then in the spring, we are looking to launch a pilot program to look at offering accessibility grants to organizations that are not 501c3s, but have a fiscal sponsor. So just some resources to think about, in addition to the other resources that I dropped in the links that our panelists gave us. So any final words, any final thoughts from the team?
I'd just like to thank our panelists for being here today and sharing their perspective.
Yay.
Thank you.
Definitely, I echo that. Thank you. And thank you all for taking the time to be here. If there's not any other parting words of wisdom, then we will end a little early, and I will have this recording available later online. Please reach out to the panelists if you have any other questions or want any additional information, or reach out to South Arts. We're happy to help. Thank you everyone for being here, and enjoy your Thursday.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.